early this morning, no sun coming in my window, and I still got a flannel shirt on. It's not food plot season yet for most of it, and it's not even time to consider frost seeding. You want to do that if you're fortunate enough to catch it one of the last couple frosts or maybe the last snow of the year. But it is time to start thinking about food plots. So I'm going to be really honored today to visit with Keith Burns of Green Cover Seeds. Keith has a wealth of experience. Now, Keith's on the ag side, and they literally help farmers, coast to coast, north to south. And all that experience from all these years of doing that, plus being a farmer himself, has really helped me be a better food plot farmer. And we want to share some of that information with you. Hey, good morning, Keith. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, good morning, Grant. Always great to see you, and it's a pleasure to always visit.
Yeah, and I know you travel all the time. I think you're in St. Louis today.
Yeah, in St. Louis, I've got a couple days of meetings here and a couple days in Columbia, Missouri, and then back home.
And just roughly, Keith, because I don't know if everyone realizes how much you're in this, how many meetings or presentations a year, field events, whatever, a year do you think you do?
Yeah, great question. I probably speak to different groups 50 to 60 times a year. Some are large groups, thousands. Some of them are small groups, just a few. But those are the live events, and then of course, we've got thousands of hours of video and content on our YouTube channel and website. So it's all about people make good decisions when they have good information.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's on top of your home farm there in Nebraska, still farming the family farm, you and your brother?
Yep. We're still farming about 1,800 acres in south central Nebraska and growing some cover crop seed and some corn and beans and some other things and raising 7 kids and grandkids and the whole works. Yeah.
You got to have 1,800 acres to feed all those kids, Keith.
Some days.
Well, gosh, it's almost food plot season. And several years ago now, Keith and I got together. I actually, to be honest, I begged my way in. I drove up to Green Cover because I knew what they were doing and just fascinated with how they're improving soil health and the knowledge they have, and broke bread with Keith and kind of begged my way into saying, hey, let's help people on the wildlife side too. You're doing an awesome job with production farmers and ranchers. I think improving soil health applies to everyone, even us food plot farmers. And Keith was gracious and patient with me. So here we are a number of years later and just doing some good stuff. But Keith, it's time for people to start thinking about buying seed. The economy, maybe it's going to get better, but everyone's still thinking about these things. So how's a way some folks can save some money this year on their food plot seed?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, everybody, whether, 10,000 acre farmer or a half acre food plot guy, everybody's concerned about, finances. It's tight everywhere. So it's a great question. And, the food plot seeds that we offer online, they include the shipping price. And so, when you look at it, that's one of the reasons they may look high at first is they're including that shipping price. Because we don't want any surprises. So, here's the price delivered to your door. And because of that, when you're ordering just 1 or 2, bags or boxes, that price tends to be pretty high because, we don't have the benefit of volume shipping on that. But the way that people can really save money on our program, with the release series of food plots, is to order more than 1 bag. And because we've got discounts all the way up to 25% discount if you order 40 bags, and there's discount breaks at 10 bags, 20 bags, 30 bags, and then of course 40. And really what's being discounted, it's not the seed so much as it is the shipping. Because if that FedEx truck has to drive to your place, it's going to cost them the same amount to drop off 1 box as it is to do 5. Or 10, and then as you get more and more, there's just volume at scale. And so I know some people don't have enough, land or food plot to do that. So what we encourage people to do, number one, you can order your summer seed and your fall seed at the same time. And we'll talk a little bit later, I think, about some of the inoculants, how we've got new inoculants now that we're very comfortable they're going to be still viable, even if they're on the seed for 9 months. So you can order your seed for the whole year at once, and so that can help you get to some volume. And then the other great thing, and I know, hunters are a great community. Hunters know hunters, and they like swapping stories. And and sharing things. Well, order your seed together, place one group shipment, get 3, 4, 5 guys together. Now all of a sudden you're up into that 30, 40 bag range. And now you've got those significant discounts. Ship it to one location because that's where the savings is, and then just divvy it up from there.
I do that. I have several neighbors. We have an unofficial deer co-op here, just no money changing hands, buddies helping buddies type thing. A true co-op. I think it's the true American spirit. And so seed ships here. And then, I'll call them, hey, it's here, so get it organized ahead of time. We're already talking, hey, I'm going to plant this, you're going to plant that. And that's the way we all can save money. And everyone out there can too. So thanks for sharing that, Keith. 25% is huge. And 40 bags isn't that much. You got a couple buddies and Fred over here is hunting on the back of his grandma's land or whatever. Spring and fall blends, that's easy to do. And saving 25%, that's a big deal. A big deal. Yeah. Keith, you and your brother started this company a long time ago. We're not going to take time to go through those stories. I think it's fascinating, the American dream. But y'all buy a bunch of seed. How many acres do you think will folks plant a green cover seed this year?
Well, we'll provide enough seed to folks to cover over 1 million acres. So yeah, it's well over 35 million pounds of seed that we'll bring in and then we'll send back out. So it's a lot.
So I wanted to share that because freshness, and when you're that big, checking the freshness and everything, you do testing all the time, I'm sure.
We do, and it's actually it's law. There's a federal seed labeling law, and it requires certain parameters. But for the most part, you have to have everything retested, every 9 months at a minimum. And so we spend tens of thousands of dollars testing and retesting our seed just to make sure it's good, because we don't want to send something out and have a poor product. And frankly, that's one of the reasons that we haven't set up a program where we can have this on the shelf at Tractor Supply or, at a big box store, because the problem is going to be quality. I get that seed out there and if they don't sell it, well, they're just sticking it in the back room and they'll bring it right back out the next year. Well, number one, that's not legal, because if that label is not within the parameters according to the label law, it's technically not legal. But number two, it might not be a good product. And so, when we do carry seed over, it all gets retested and it all gets quality checked. We'll put fresh inoculants on it. And so, we spend a lot of money paying attention to seed quality because we have to, because if I send bad seed out to somebody on 5,000 acres, that's a huge hit. I don't even want to send seed out to somebody with half an acre, because that's still 100% of their ground. And so from a percentage standpoint, that's a disaster. And we just don't want to be part of that.
Yeah, and I appreciate your integrity on that. And folks, what you do every time you go look, if you go into a store, there's a label, as Keith said, by law. Check that date. There'll be a date on there. And it's so important to read that for several reasons. But I have personally been to stores, and I'm a nerd, I'm a geek. So I look at that label and man, it expired last year. Well, someone held it over because that's they could take a financial loss if they don't do that or something, but it's your food plot. You want that seed to jump out of the ground, germinate quickly, and be really viable. The other thing, while we're talking about labels, look in there, because there may be something on the front of the bags. Always a picture of a big buck. Keith and I agreed a long time ago, there's no picture of deer on any of our bags, right? None, because that's just marketing. We're about truth, but it may show some fancy, whatever, latest, greatest clover or whatever. And you look on the back and it's 1% of the blend. That's kind of misleading, I think. We're never going to do anything like that at all. So read that label. Take time to read the label. Get your eyes off the picture of the big buck on the shiny print on the front of the bag and flip it over and read the label. And that lets you know exactly what you're planting, which is so important. You go through all this time and energy and waiting for the rain. Your crop doesn't grow. Sometimes it's a problem with the seed.
Yeah, and the other thing on the clovers is sometimes those clovers are heavily coated with a clay product, which it's not a bad product. It can help in some instances, but your 1% of clover may contain 50% of that might be clay, and so all of our clovers don't have the clay coating. They have the right inoculant on it. But you're getting 100% seed and not 50% seed on those.
Yeah, that's real important to note. Thank you, because you could really be paying a bunch of money per bag, and half of it or more than half is clay. You're buying some really expensive clay. Yeah. Another thing I really like about green cover, and everyone out there by now has probably heard of GMO, and with Mr. Kennedy's confirmation coming up, everyone's thinking about health and whatnot, which is a great thing. It's also true for our wildlife, and some of the insecticides and coatings on seed, and I've shown this in the past. If you read the label, even on some production ag products, the first line on the back label is caution, harmful to wildlife. And half the guys out there are broadcasting, and turkeys, and they're just eating it right off the ground. So you guys don't have any of that, do you, Keith?
No, for several reasons. Number one, we work with lots and lots of organic growers, and so they can't have any GMO seed whatsoever. So from the cover crop standpoint, we've never carried any GMOs. I mean, we have some soybeans, but they're non-GMO. We have some corn, it's non-GMO. So everything we have is non-GMO. And a lot of it is, varieties that have been specifically bred for forage growth and not grain growth, because we're not trying to grow grain for these deer.
Yeah.
We're trying to grow forage.
Yes.
And then, nothing ever gets treated with a chemical. So neonicotinoids or fungicides, insecticides. There are places where that's useful, especially in the farming community. But it's just not needed in the wildlife and the food plotters. And so we don't have any of the chemicals. Again, we just legally, we can't if we're going to be working with these organic growers. So we don't do it for anybody, including ourselves. So we don't have any of that treatment. We do some biological seed treatments, which we can talk about here too, but that's the only treatments that go on the seed.
Yeah. So when you see seed that's bright green or bright orange, that's literally there for a warning, folks. And you got your hands in it and you're touching your face. Oh, that's nasty. It's horrible, harsh chemistry. You don't want to do that. And that's one reason I'm really happy to be with Green Cover. We do none of that, zero. So very excited about that. We talked just a little bit about checking a date, but that's even more important. And some states are a little lax on that. Some are really good. Actually go to stores and, oh, you got to take this seed off the shelf. But there's a lot of stores out there, folks. So it's really up to you to read the label. You're going to go to all this energy and expense of planting a food plot. The most important part of it is the seed. It all starts with the seed. So read that label.
Cheap seed that doesn't come up isn't very cheap. Because then you got to go through all the effort again. So yeah, be really careful about that.
One thing Keith and I have been big on from day one is blends versus a single species, or what some people call a monoculture, but a single species. And forever that was just, well, I'm planting me some Dutch clover or something like that, But blends, I learned early on, many, many years ago, I can get more tonnage through research than I can a single species. Different plants at different heights, different leaf shapes are really capturing more of the sun's energy. And it's all about photosynthesis, or the sun, not trying to be too technical here. So we know literally we can grow more tons per acre. And when you're a food plotter and you're limited on food plot acres, right? I'm in the old hills and hollers of the Ozark Mountains. Boy, it's not flat. I wanted more acres. It's too steep on the hillside. So more tons per acre, feeding more deer per acre, having better quality forage than the neighbor is really important to me.
Well, it is. And our whole company's been built on building that diverse mix for the customer, because we have seen the power of diversity and how resilient that crop can be, how it uses moisture so much more efficiently. It uses and cycles nutrients, captures sunlight. And really, it shouldn't surprise us, Grant. If we look at how God created, this world, just go look at any really great natural ecosystem, whether it's the prairie or a forest, you're going to see crazy amounts of diversity out there. And then you go look at how we're farming, you see almost no diversity out there. Yeah. And so really, we're just trying to emulate God's perfect system of how he created these plants to grow synergistically with tall ones, short ones, deep-rooted, shallow-rooted, grasses, legumes, broadleaves, forbs. And so really, that's what we're trying to do, is emulate a natural system and let plants grow the way that God created them. And also, if you think about it, from a competition standpoint, or a competition for resources, anything that's grown in a monoculture, think of a whole field of soybeans. You've got a whole field of soybeans, you've got 180,000 plants per acre out there. Every single plant is the same. It's got the same leaf shape. It's got the same canopy height. It's got the same root depth. That's absolutely the most competitive environment you could ever put that seed into, and you'll start seeing things suffer from lack of water, lack of nutrients, simply because you are crowding and making an incredibly competitive environment. But now, if that soybean plant is next to a sorghum plant or next to a radish or next to a buckwheat, now all of a sudden I've got different heights, I've got different leaf structure, I've got different rooting depths. Those plants tend to be much more cooperative, share resources, need things at different times. It just becomes an ecosystem of cooperation and not competition.
That goes really far, and we don't want to get too deep in it. But, Keith, here where I live, in the last couple of falls, armyworms have been an issue in the county in the area. I can't say this for certain, but I know for certain we've not had an armyworm problem at my place. And I've always planted a really diverse green cover blend. And my soils are pretty healthy from doing this several years of planting diverse blends. But, I'll get a call from someone south of me. Oh, man, I went out to my food plot and armyworms wiped the whole thing out. And I'm like, oh, man, here they come, and we're all a little nervous. We're going out there checking plots all the time. And I hear this from professional farmers, too. Really healthy soil and a diverse mix of plants working together. There's a lot of symbiotic relationships or cooperative relationships going on under the soil, literally microbes going out different plants and all these things. It's fascinating what's going on there. And it's healthier. And therefore the deer herd is healthier.
Yeah, for sure. And part of that armyworm issue is whatever diversity you see above the ground is magnified either for the good or the bad under the ground. So if you've only got one thing up here, your biological diversity underneath is very low. And so that leads to the invitation for pests to attack your system. But if you've got a really diverse mix up here, you've got great diverse biology. All these plants they're not growing in environments where there's no pathogens, where there's no pests, where there's no, predators. They're growing in an environment where it's balanced, and the good things are managing the bad things for you. And when we go in there and we just nuke it with chemicals, we kill everything. Well, guess which ones grow back the fastest? It's the pests, it's the pathogens. Sure. And so then you get on that treadmill of just having to do that all the time. So yeah, that diversity just helps in so many ways.
Including nutrients, and we know that you're helping that with some of the coatings, and I'm going to use coatings very generically here, but Keith, for years now, coming on a decade, I've not used any fertilizer except some test strips. Well, what would happen if I did this? Take an 1/8 acre out of a 2-acre food plot. That's what I'm talking about. A fertilizer truck, a fertilizer buggy hasn't been on my property, folks, in over a decade, and very minimal herbicide. And I don't think anybody, certainly a food plotter, gets up in the morning, wants to go out on the road, open cab tractor, go, boy, I'm going to spray some Roundup today, and I can't wait for the turn in the wind that's blowing all in my face. No one says that, like, boy, I love the smell of Roundup in the morning. No one says that. So we've been blessed a lot through your teaching to not have to do that and saving the expense of fertilizer, and not just expense, folks, because one of the things I've realized I haven't taught enough on is soil compaction and the damage of soil compaction. We preach no-till and not disking where appropriate, but just driving heavy equipment, fertilizer buggies, fertilizer trucks, really squeezes that soil. So if you don't mind, share about some of your coatings. I know you got some newer advanced technology going on there, and how it's much cheaper to spend a few dollars per acre on these inoculants and coatings and microbes than it is $100, $200 an acre on fertilizer.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are all great points. And beyond all the benefits you listed, just the contamination to the environment issue, there's so many areas that have high nitrates in their water, areas where they get a lot of rain, they're starting to get phosphorus loading in a lot of the lakes and streams. And so it's a big deal. It's a big issue. And that responsibility goes on everybody who is planting a crop, not just farmers. It goes on people who have lawns, it goes on golf courses, and it goes on food plotters, because if you're putting fertilizer out there, it's something you need to manage. But to your point, and people will hear, well, Grant hasn't used any fertility for X number of years. And I've got farmers that have used no synthetic fertilizer inputs for years. And they go, well, how can that be? Because, when I cut back on my fertilizer, my crops look terrible. Well, it's because you don't have the biology. If you look at, the soil is made up of 45% of that soil is minerals. 45% by volume is probably 95% by weight. And those minerals are the things that your plants need to grow. And if you were to get a test, and then they have a test called the total nutrient digestion, which that doesn't really matter. But what it would show you is that you've got enough nutrients, plant nutrients in your soil to grow crops for the next thousands and thousands of years. It's all there, but it's not available to the plants. And so you have to have the biology to unlock it. Same way with nitrogen. Nitrogen is the number one nutrient other than carbon that plants need, but our atmosphere is 78% nitrogen. And so above every acre of Ozark Mountain ground that you have, Grant, you've got 30,000 tons of nitrogen out there. It's just not in a form that plants can use. And so God created in this system the biology that can unlock that. And so for the nitrogen, we have legumes in the mix. We've got, cowpeas, we've got mung beans, we've got lab, we've got peas in the fall mixes. Those can form relationships with the right kind of bugs, the rhizobia, that will make that atmospheric nitrogen available to the plant. It's a beautiful system. And so we put the rhizobium right on the seed. Now, one of the problems with rhizobium in the past is that they're not very hardy. They don't live very long. And so initially you had to put that on right when you were planting. And that's just inconvenient. It's difficult. It's hard to get a good coverage on your seed.
Yeah.
Well, now, we've been working with some really innovative companies across the world, and we've got our inoculant program now dialed in. We're really where we want it. And so now that rhizobium inoculant, it's good on the seed for 9 months. So we can put it on now. You can buy your fall release and plant it in August, and you're good to go. And so we're really excited about that. So that whole package, and you might see this, on the website or on the bag, we call it the Green Boost package. But it's combining all three of those different inoculant types. It goes on all of the seed. And so when you open that bag, it's ready to go in the ground. And not only is the seed ready to go to work, but all that biology on the seed is ready to go to work as well.
Yeah, and Keith and I have talked about this before, folks. So I'm personally not aware of any other food plot seed company in the industry by far that's anywhere near offering something like this or this technically advanced. Again, this is because Keith and Green Cover are working with production farmers and selling enough seed to plant 1 million plus acres. So the volume discount of providing those noctis, if it was Grant Wood Seed Company, I wouldn't even know that existed or be able to do that. So huge advantage of partnering with Green Cover.
Yeah.
Huge.
Well, and the fact that we can go to these top companies, some of them are in India, some of them in the US, but we can go to these top companies and say, here's what we want. Can you build it for us? And we can do enough volume that they can make these custom design inoculant blends just for us.
Yeah, folks, if you're not getting this, let me break this around. This is like, you're hunting Granny's 5 acres, but your buddy owns a King Ranch, and he says, hey, come hunt the King Ranch. Or he's got, a big Rocky Mountain ranch or Elkhart, and you get to hunt that for free. That's what that's like. So this is a huge thing.
Growing Deer is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Also by Green Cover Food Plots, Winchester, PH Outdoors, Moultrie Mobile, Steel, Fleet Outdoor Apparel, Morel Targets, Fourth Arrow, Black Widow Bows, Soil Pro Outdoors, Scorpion Venom Archery, Case IH Tractors, Burris Optics, and Redneck Hunting Blinds.
With all this working underground, and it's even much more complicated than Keith says, that results in actually making plants taste healthier. And if you've ever watched a deer walk out in a soybean field, Iowa, wherever, and they eat a leaf here and they take 2 steps and eat a leaf here, they're very picky. Deer are very picky. That little narrow muzzle God put on a deer makes them what we call concentrate selectors, are very finicky eaters. Keith and I have raised kids. We know what finicky can be. So you want your food plots, very candidly, to taste better than the food on a neighbor's property. We all want to see deer in daylight hours on our property when we're out there trying to get some venison for our families. So having really healthy plants with all these microbes going in there and the nutrients certainly are better. And Keith, I'll share this with you. I haven't talked about this in a long time, but Dr. Stefan Van Vliet and I just spoke earlier this week, and we submitted samples, liver and loin. Boy, it was painful giving up some loin. From 17 deer here at the Proving Grounds eating green cover and our native vegetation. And those results are just coming in. And I should have completed results by mid-February. And they're looking really good, Keith. You're going to want to come eat venison from the Proving Grounds because, I mean, it's looking really good. Dr. Van Vliet and I are super excited. We'll be sharing this, might get you on that when we share this to help break it all down for us. And that's one advantage because I'm in the Ozark Mountains, and Keith laughs when he's here. He's been here many times, how shallow our soil is. And, you know, rocks the size of my head out there in the field. It's rough, folks. It's rough on drills. It's rough on tractors. And we're growing really good crops. I don't mean that boastful. We're growing good crops in a very difficult environment. And a big part of that has been working with Keith and the systems we use.
Yeah. And you know, it's not surprising that you're going to see these great results from Dr. Van Vliet. He's done a ton of research with a lot of our customers who are doing grass-fed beef. And the results coming from, you know, the grass-fed beef versus corn-fed beef, you know, the omega levels, just that nutrient density that you're talking about is so much better when they're grazing in an environment that is specifically designed for health and growth. And just real quick, one of the reasons is that, you know, again, God created these plants to be incredibly productive. But what goes into the nutrition, what goes into taste, what goes into flavor, what goes into smell, it's all these phytonutrients, it's all these hormones, it's all of these very, very complex carbon compounds, but that plant only makes that at the end. And so if that plant is not healthy at the end, or, you know, as it's growing and getting more mature, that's one of the first things it will sacrifice. So you can see the same plant out there. It might look about the same size, but if you don't have the soil health, if you don't have the biological health, if you don't have the plant health, it's not putting all of those nutrients and all of the flavors and the tastes and the colors, because those are the last things to get added. And if you're short on resources, those aren't getting in there. So that's why you can have plants that look very similar and taste very, very different.
Yes, and the same thing's true throughout all of God's creation. Same is true for deer. And healthier deer that are eating a better diet have literally bigger antlers and more fawns, or larger fawns, healthier fawns, better milk production. Same with the cow. So we want the best quality food we can have when we're deer, you know, managers like me. I don't just want to harvest deer. I want really healthy deer. I enjoy seeing bigger bucks and lots of fawns and lots of turkeys out there. And it all starts with nutrition.
Yeah, it sure does. And again, it's no different for the deer manager or the guy who's making his living, you know, raising beef for a living, or even selling crops, because, you know, there's farmers. We've got a lot of customers that are now getting some really good premiums because they're getting their products tested through labs like Dr. Van Vliet's. They're getting it tested, and now they can show this is significantly better than everything else out on the market. So they're getting a premium for it. And they should get a premium for it because it's a better product.
Yeah, as far as either one of us know, Dr. Van Vliet and I, this is the first research on whitetails at this level of nutritional quality in the world ever, period. So I'm super excited to share these results. There's no sponsorship or money here, folks. I'm paying to have these samples processed. This is just, I want to encourage people to realize when you have healthy crops, healthy habitat, literally the best food you can provide your families to venison from your own land. The healthiest, think about that, the healthiest food you can provide your family is something you enjoy doing, working on the habitat, hunting. That's a win-win in my book, you know.
It is. And so really, when you look at, you know, how much are you spending to develop your plots and plant the seed and manage it and do all these things, hey, you can go tell your wife it's really an investment in our family health, honey. So
that's right.
I need that girl. I need that roller crimper. It's for you. It's for us.
Yeah. You make sure to tell Trace that. Well, Keith, I appreciate your time this morning. What else would you like to share with us?
Well, you know, it's always great to visit with like-minded people. And what is just always so encouraging to me is that it doesn't matter if we're working, like, say, with a 10,000 acre ranch or farm or the smallest of parcels, we know that the same principles work, because it's the principles that God put into place when he created, the plants and the biology and the soil to all work together. It's just encouraging to know that, now we have to do different things to make those principles work in different areas, but it's just really great to be able to see how those principles function from South Carolina to Texas to Missouri to Nebraska to, all the way out in California. We do a lot of work out there in California. And we just to see the same principles at work because it's the same designer who created it all.
That's exactly right, Keith. It's our loving Father that created all this. So as I've learned more and I get older, I'm not surprised that the context of how these systems work are the same because there's one creator. But how they're applied, timing, you don't plant seeds same time in South Florida as you do in Minnesota. Those things change based on a local specific property, but the principles are applied everywhere. And that's really great. And just one more system that points to a creator and not something random. And of course, you and I know that to be true.
Yep. Amen.
Amen. Keith, thanks for taking time for your meeting. I want to remind everyone, get with your buddies just like I do. Daniel and I do. We got several friends in the area. We get a big order together, and that saves us all money. You can do the same, up to 25%. That's huge. When's the last time you saved 25% on something? So Keith and Green Cover team, thanks for doing that. Y'all can reach out to Colton at Green Cover. That's who I get my seed from. So I'm going to throw Colton under the bus because his phone's going to ring off the hook now.
He's a great resource. He's a great resource. Yeah.
No, y'all call, answer questions. If Daniel and I can help anyone, let us know. Keith, thanks again. And, I really want everyone to me, there's no better illustration than getting seed in a bag. Looks pretty dead. Really, seed looks kind of dead. Putting it in the soil and it raises to life. And that's just a really good illustration of our Creator, our Lord Jesus Christ, who lived a perfect life here and paid for our sins by dying a horrible death and then resurrected. Our only hope is in resurrection. The rest of it's just a great story. Everything goes on resurrection. Keith and I know that. We want everyone out there to know that. Again, Keith, thanks for this time. And I hope everyone enjoys creation today.
Thank you, Grant. Thanks, everybody.